Welcome! My name is Kelly Anderson, and this is Fanimated, the animation fan podcast where every week we get a chance to geek out about our favorite animated media. Emma Martin is back this week to help me dive into the Cartoon Network miniseries Over the Garden Wall. Created by Patrick McHale, Over the Garden Wall first aired in November 2014. This dark fantasy adventure follows brothers Wirt and Greg on an adventure through a mysterious wood called the Unknown. Speaking of, if this show is unknown to you, be wary of spoilers lurking in the shadows. Or just go watch the show, it's amazing. Now let's get started and let's get animated. Emma, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Kelly?
I'm doing well. Are you gonna dress up for Halloween this year?
You know, I'm not sure. Usually at this age, I feel like it's not socially acceptable unless I'm going to a party. So There's one party in particular this weekend that might possibly be Halloween oriented. So if it is, then yes.
Yeah.
If I don't have a party, then no.
Not gonna dress up just for yourself and walk around town.
Because I would be one of those people who dresses up as a character that only I would know. I mean, whether
valid.
it's an anime character, a cartoon character, I would pick someone like Rayla from the Dragon Prince. Yeah! I want to be her for Halloween.
You basically are her. Okay,
Stop.
guys, if you haven't seen The Dragon Prince on Netflix, you need to. And also, Rayla is basically Emma. Emma is Rayla. They are the same.
Yes. I mean, she's just like a kick-butt elf woman who has a Scottish accent and is a ninja, so that's pretty cool, I guess.
Very.
So, but like, I feel like not enough people would be able to be like, oh yeah, that's Rayla from the Dragon Prince. Like,
True.
You might know.
I would definitely know, and I would freak out. Yeah, but I only have one good costume for Pearl from the episode, the last one out of Beach City, where she wears more human clothes because it's easier to dress up in human clothes. But I've always really wanted to make an outfit for Star Butterfly from Star vs. the Forces of Evil. She's
nice. On
my list. Like, I need to get that figured out. Probably not this year, because it's coming up on the deadline. Anyway, I'm so glad you're here because Over the Garden Wall is one of my absolute top animated things of all time. And this season of autumn is just like, I immediately, when the leaves are turning, I'm like, it's time for Over the Garden Wall.
Yeah, it's like a Halloween tradition ever since the first time you introduced it to me. So autumn just gets you in the spirit for Over the Garden Wall.
Do you remember the first time you saw it? Was it with me?
I believe so, because I remember the second time we watched it together was for your and Jamie's birthday party, the combined one we had. And for some reason, we must have started it really late because I remember, like, being so tired at the end of it. But I had to stay awake because it was so good.
Yes.
But I think, the first time was definitely with you. I just don't remember where. But that will allude to the themes of the show. I took thorough notes, people, because let me tell you, just rewatching this again was so fun. Like, before we pressed the record button, I was literally crying on Kelly's couch because I was laughing so hard at one of the characters' quirks. And it was awesome. There's so many good moments in the show.
I should say, yes, it is a series first. Like, it's a mini-series, the first that Cartoon Network produced. They have kind of a thing where they do that now. So it's 10 episodes, but each episode is short format. So it's like 11, 12 minutes. So 10, 12-minute episodes. It's kind of like a movie, a short movie. That's the only way I've ever watched it is as a short movie. I've never, because when it was airing, they aired on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and they did 2 episodes per day. in 1 week, and that's how it was premiered on the network.
Convenient.
Yeah. And so I did not watch it while it was coming out. I watched it not that long after it. So I was able to watch the whole thing in one sitting, you know, unlike those who had to wait. That would be really hard.
Yeah, it doesn't feel as connected when you watch it in such short pieces because it's such a complex system going on.
Yeah.
That, like, you just need it all at once. Like, even, so last night I rewatched all of it except for the last 2 episodes. And I did it for the sake of getting a good night's sleep. But this morning I was like, it doesn't feel complete. Like, I should have watched it all together like a movie.
Yeah. And especially after episode 8, it's kind of that, you know, Greg leaves.
Yes.
And you're just like, what? And Wirt falls into the pond, right?
Yeah. The, like, what got them there to the unknown.
Yes, because episode 9 is the backstory for the boys. I mean, the basic premise for Over the Garden Wall is these 2 brothers. They're stepbrothers. Wirt and Greg. Greg is the younger, Wirt is the older brother. Wirt's in high school. Greg is, you know, whatever he is. He's younger. And they are lost in the woods and they're trying to get home. That is the basic premise for the show. And then the rest of it is them getting through this world called the unknown. And every episode is a different location, a different, like, mini story, a different you know, problem they have to solve. They run into Beatrice, who is a bluebird, and
she's a boss.
She is so great. I mean, all the characters are really fleshed out and really well done, and the humor is just top notch. So story-wise, it's those 3, and they're, you know, the boys are trying to get home. Beatrice is actually a human, and she's trying to get her family and her to turn back into humans because it was her fault that they all turned into bluebirds in the first place.
Correct.
And and there is a woodsman. The woodsman character is the other character that pops in and out of the story, and he is using the oil of these trees, the Edelwood trees, to keep this lantern lit, which he believes contains the soul of his daughter. So as long as he can keep the lantern lit, his daughter is alive. And the beast has kind of manipulated him into doing that. And so the beast is after the children, and he turns lost souls into the Edelwood trees that are then turned into oil. And so it's the show has a very creepy vibe. It's a weird mix of, like, humor and fun, and then, like, pretty dark and terrifying moments.
Yeah, not exactly what you'd expect to be on Cartoon Network.
No.
And by the way, I wasn't timing you, but that was an excellent recap.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
For the first one, I didn't really write down anything except for just what I loved about the characters. Because the first episode just kind of brought it all back.
The first episode is called The Old Grist Mill.
Yes. It's kind of introducing you to the characters. You get to meet the woodsman. Yeah, once again, I just was writing down characteristics about Wirt and Greg because I was like, wow, I have missed these 2 people. So one, Wirt.
Yeah, let's just go through the characters.
He's voiced by Elijah Wood, and I love Elijah Wood so much. Like, he voiced Spyro in some of the new Spyro games, and I thought he was excellent. And also, he's Frodo Baggins, so that's pretty awesome. But just his monologues of going into this dramatic metaphor, all these, he's like a poet. He just on the spot, he just goes into how his soul feels. He's like, wow, it is as if I'm in this cavernous rock and I will just be laying on top of this rock and just staring into the abyss. And, like, he just talks, like, so smooth and elegantly, and it just goes on, and he's so dramatic.
Yeah,
so
he's super
funny.
over dramatic. He drones on about it, but then in social situations, he's, like, super awkward.
Right, and he's so, like, blunt and to the point of a person. Yet he has these off monologues where he'll just be somewhere else and using metaphors that you're like, what? How does this relate? Oh, he's great.
Yeah. The very, very beginning, and something that I didn't notice until I rewatched it all with the commentary, is after the first opening sequence, the frog sings the song, and you have all they show you a whole bunch of glimpses, basically, of the episodes that are coming. Mm-hmm. So you get a little glimpse for every episode, and it changes. And then after the title card of Over the Garden Wall, before you see the boys walking through the wood, there's this like weird cloudy mist thing that happens for just like a couple seconds. They pointed that out, and with because the commentary was with Nick Cross, the artistic director, and Pat McHale, the creator, and they were saying that was like the foreshadowing of them being in the water at the end.
Oh, yeah. See, I didn't catch that.
I didn't either.
I didn't even think about that.
That was something new that I noticed this time because they were pointing that out. And another thing I liked that they said was, and it really works well, is that we as the audience are thrown into the story and thrown into the world just as Wirt and Greg are. Mm-hmm. So we as an audience are just as lost as they are within this story of what is going on.
We're not getting any further explanation than they are.
Exactly. And that's what I love, is that like even in the first episode you have, you know, this weird woodsman and this creepy vibe in this creepy forest and this terrifying dog that has been like cursed.
Well, he swallowed a turtle.
He swallowed a turtle.
It'll get you.
It'll get you. So yeah, I thought that was fun too. That it really is. We get to be a part of the story as Wirt and Greg's are in kind of their perspective too.
Mm-hmm. And I think because we are as clueless as them, it allows us to be a part of their journey, and really feel connected with the characters, like, because their relationship obviously grows throughout the series.
Yeah. And the other thing, that's after every title card for every episode is you hear a train whistle.
You do?
Yeah, there's a train whistle before every episode. And that's another foreshadow
because
for the end.
At the end, they're dodging a train.
They're dodging in the train and fall into the water.
Now, I took all these notes, and now I feel like my world has changed already. Holy crap.
Well, that's what we're doing. We're uncovering beautiful things about animation.
Woohoo! Okay. Let's talk about Greg for a little bit, since we talked about Wirt. I noted his overall innocence and naivety. Like, even when Wirt would say some mean things to Greg, he would just be like, okay, let's try something new. Like, he never was negative about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole thing, is that Greg has the hope that the beast can't tear down, and Wirt is the one who can be suffocated by that despair.
Some notes on Greg's personality and his innocence. Asking creepy people for help, pointing out the obvious, candy and pants for a trail, revealing the escape plan. It's a rock fact. Trips over his own candy. He has a pet frog. When the beast comes upon him for the first time, or it's really the dog, the first thing he says is, oh my goodness, he has beautiful eyes. Like nothing scares him. And then finally, when he meets Beatrice, his first comment is, let's small talk.
So, like Greg, I mean, Wirt is funny in his own way, but Greg really brings the humor into the show. And you just mentioned the candy in the pants.
Like, what is this?
And that's one of those things where you're like, wait, why does he have candy in his pants? And you don't know until the end, because they're originally from a more modern time. And I say modern really loosely because the world of the unknown is very like vintagey, like American colonialism, or, you know, this old feel. And then, even though it isn't set in a specific time, and then they are from
sort of
80s.
Present. I mean, he does have a tape player, but then his friend Sarah does not have a tape player, so
it's a cassette tape. And I'm just like,
I mean, yeah.
So I don't know time periods. Okay, so apparently I was trying to look it up. If anyone has a specific answer, they can email us, fanmatedpodcast@gmail.com. But they never specifically say what time period they're from, but they have a cassette tape. So it's not
too old, but
it's got to be some sort of vintage, because the creators are also saying in the commentary that like the Halloween costumes that the kids are wearing at the end of the backstory episode, they like looked them up, like they're actual vintage costumes that people would have bought in like the 70s or 80s. So I'm like,
research
that time period era, and I think that's so cool. Like, because I forget her name, but the one girl is wearing an egg costume. Like, she's literally an egg.
What's with that?
Like, that's like real. Anyway, going off on side tangents.
It's all good.
But yeah, it was all about the candy. That it's Halloween, and that's why he has candy in his pants.
Yes, and also the rock facts. Multiple times, Greg will say this, we can call it a fact, but he calls it a rock fact and holds up a literal rock with a face on it. And that alludes to the last episode that kind of showing you where they're coming from before they're in the unknown.
Yeah, the rock facts are usually not actual facts. They're just, it's like...
It's what Greg considers a fact, but it really isn't.
I feel like there should be someone on Twitter just commenting on everyone's like stuff. That's a rock fact. That's a rock fact.
More of a mockery than anything.
Oh dear. Wirt, I feel he's the one that changes the most throughout the series. Like, it's his like character arc that happens, and it doesn't happen without Greg. Wirt is able to just realize that he wasn't a super great brother, and that his view on reality is very skewed and like just wrong, like, and builds confidence through the series too. And we as the audience really have to love Greg for everything else to work. And I mean, they set that up from the very beginning. He is completely and utterly loved by fans.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know how you can not love Greg.
Yeah.
I remember the first time watching this, and I was like, oh, this is kind of a fun, creepy story, and of these two brothers journeying along. And then you get to the end episode, which puts them back in reality, quote unquote. And you're like, whoa, like, they're part of a different world, so where is this unknown happening? So, I mean, like, even in the beginning song of the first episode, it says, if dreams can't come true, why not pretend? What are your thoughts on what the unknown actually is?
Yes, excellent question. This is a great example of a story finding me at the right time in my life, because it came out in November of 2014, and that April, my grandmother passed away. And so, going into the holiday season, knowing that she wasn't going to be there, and it's just like still fresh. So for me, watching it the first time, I was just bawling, like, because for me, in that interpretation, I was recognizing it as the boys, they were dying. Like, I mean, this was some sort of like, the unknown was like some sort of limbo area where what happened there was going to affect whether they lived or not. The whole story had a really big impact, and Greg wasn't giving up, and that Wirt was able to find that hope and want to bring Greg back. So for me, in that first interpretation, the first viewing, and I still want to believe, is that it is like a real place, maybe not physically, but a real place kind of between life and death. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I viewed it. Now, I mean, knowing what the creators intended it, maybe not. But before I go into that, what are your interpretations?
Yeah, I'm coming from a similar standpoint. When I first watched it, it didn't really click for me. Actually, the first two times, really. I was a little slow. But when I first saw it, I took it more of like from a magical, literal approach, if that's a thing. In that I was like, these boys fell into the water, and suddenly they're in this other realm. and they meet all these people, and then at the end when they're in the hospital waking up and you see like the characters from both the worlds still living their lives, it was like, okay, so are they both real realities, or like how do these worlds connect to each other? And it wasn't till this last time that it really sat with me. Maybe I realized it the second time, but just refreshing over it last night, I was like, wow, this is a lot deeper than I expected or that I remembered. For me, it's, yes, that idea of the in-between death and your next destination, whether that's a good place or a bad place, or if that's just whatever the destination is, it's an in-between spot. That just made, with that thought in mind at the beginning, of like right now they're in a state where they're in this limbo area, and because their bodies are like drowning in water, dying, like they are making choices whether to stay and live or die. Yeah. Like how in many times when someone is in a coma, mentally they can still fight a battle of sorts.
Yes.
So then in every episode I would find like different things of like the different characters, even just side characters, who were maybe also stuck in the in-between and trying to move on. So maybe for the woodsman, he was lost without his daughter, and so he was slave to the beast, and that's what was keeping him from moving on. Wow, or this pumpkin cult in Pottsfield.
Yes, that honestly, that the first time watching was really where I got, because there are these skeletons that don pumpkins and vegetables and become these like pumpkin people, and Wirt and Greg come in, and one of the pumpkin people is like, you look a little too early to be here. And
yes.
And, and at the end, the big pumpkin, I don't know, king or whatever he is.
It's a cult, but whatever.
Yeah. The leader is like, you'll join us someday. Like, it really, for me, hit home the whole, like, death.
Right. And, I mean, even when Wirt and Greg are doing this physical labor because they broke a rule from being at their party, like, often Wirt would say things like, it's really nice here. I wouldn't mind staying here. Or, like, they're physically digging graves where skeletons are. And that just, like, points to the idea of, like, oh, it's maybe death is nice. Like, maybe we should just let go, like, from the actual reality when they're in the hospital. Right. Like, this is kind of nice. Maybe I should just give up.
Right. Maybe I should stay here. Like, this Pottsfield is the name of the town that they're in that episode. And, like, yeah, Pottsfield is nice. Like, people don't usually pass through Pottsfield.
Right.
It's one of the few things the pumpkins say.
Exactly.
Like, it's nice here. That's what she says, actually. And then they're like, what?
But then you have episodes like the potatoes and molasses scene where I think Greg gives a little bit more hope to everyone around.
So do you think that every side character is passing through, or in between life and death, or in death, or do you feel...
I think that more characters are passing through than we realize, like in the in-between. Yeah. There are some characters, for example, the Beast, who I believe is, kind of either like a devil or a demon figure, just he's kind of in control of the land, and he wants to keep people from life, basically. Yeah. He wants them to be dead so they can be his souls.
Right.
Or stay in the in-between so that they never get to a better place.
Yeah, I really like that. Because I never thought of the other characters as being also, like, journeying through that.
Or, like, when Wirt comes to that tavern... And there's all the characters with they're defined by their job. There's the tailor, and there's the tavern keeper. There's the baker, all these different people. And at first they deem Wirt the young lover, but then they're like, no, wait, you're a pilgrim. Yeah. And it's just like, whoa, there it is. Like, yes, he's on a journey, like figuring out do I stay or do I go?
You know, I was listening to the commentary and I was really hoping they would elaborate more, but they didn't really on the unknown itself. I think from what I could gather, they made the unknown as sort of a place of lost things. So, you know, Wirt and Greg are lost, and it's kind of a collection of all these like lost stories or lost folk tales that they kind of are running into, even though they're not, you know, these characters and places aren't necessarily based off of actual folk tales, but kind of the idea of like a lost story or lost characters, and they're traveling through that.
A couple other figures that I noted were, you know, Beatrice, because she's hoping to turn her family back into humans from being bluebirds. I don't know if they are people who live in the in-between or not, but maybe if she's stuck, it's because she needs to help her family, like, move on together. The man who they pretended was their uncle, and he like was constantly seeing this ghost in his house, and but once, you know, he reunited with this woman, they fell in love, and then they were happy. Like, it was like that was their moment to be at peace, so to speak. So yeah, there's just so many moments where I thought, you know, maybe many of these people or these characters are also stuck or lost, or have just come to believe that this is where they're supposed to be and just stick with where they're at. They're in episode 8, actually. Greg starts to have these vivid dreams of the Cloud City.
The Cloud City, yeah.
Yes. And I think that might be because, you know, he is so full of hope that maybe he's getting closer to like a better place.
Interesting.
But he won't go because he wants Wirt to come with.
Yes, and at that point, the Wirt can't, because the queen of the clouds or whatever is like, I'm sorry, I can't bring Wirt with, because he's already been claimed by the bees.
Yeah, he's questioning, like, will we ever get home? I think, you know, it's better to give up. Like, we're getting nowhere.
Yeah, Wirt just wants to quit. He doesn't have the hope that Greg has.
But that's what's so beautiful about their relationship, because, like, even though Greg has an in because he's in a good place, he's full of hope, he still sacrifices that to help Wirt.
Yes.
I mean, he deals with the beast at the end.
Wirt definitely has to deal with his own, you know, his own demons. But Greg is like, I don't want to say a bigger hero, but like he does like confront the beast directly like that, and you know, ultimately like starts losing the battle. But like he is basically took Wirt's place as the tree, as the beast's his capture,
his slave.
I love the last scene where not where they're back in the modern world, but when Beatrice and Wirt come running up to Greg, and he's turning into a tree. And I really loved what the commentary was saying about that, because it's just a really, really emotional moment. Throughout that whole scene, they do really, really amazing things with the lighting that I was noticing this time. And they said that they're almost doing that last bit as like an opera, and the light is only reaching like almost like a spotlight would. It's only the light that comes from the lantern. And, you know, in the background, the Latin like operatic version of Potatoes and Molasses is playing, because that's like Greg's song. And there's this last like interaction between Greg and Wirt, and Greg just is absolutely hilarious. And it was really interesting listening to Pat and Nick talk about it, because they were saying the funnier they made Greg at the end, the harder it was, because like as an audience member, the more jokes they put in, like the sadder it is, because you're remembering why you love Greg so much, and you know that like you're watching him die, and and it's so well done, and it just tears your heart out. And one part specifically that I really liked was when Wirt is confronting the Beast, and the Beast like lurches out at him or something, and all of the light, you can watch it get sucked up into the lantern, and then all of a sudden, because like there's the light that's like out on the ground and on the trees, and then it all just like gets sucked in, and everything zooms in real close because it's like really intense. And originally, apparently, they had one version of the story where Wirt did stay with the Beast and decided, because the Beast gives Wirt the option of putting Greg's soul in the lantern, and Wirt can carry the lantern just as the woodsman was. And of course, that's a lie.
He says, no, that's dumb.
Yes!
The one time that like a person is actually like, you know what, let's think about this. This is really dumb.
Yeah, because at that point, Wirt has changed, and he's realizing the silliness of some of those things, of like the ridiculousness of like, he's like, I'm not going to spend my whole life walking around in the woods.
With my brother in a lantern. Like.
Right. And one of the versions they had, Wirt was going to accept the burden of the lantern. And that would just be a completely different story.
Yeah, no, it would crush me. Like, saying goodbye to Greg, like, even though he's in the lantern, so to speak.
Right.
It's not the same.
I will say, I mean, I like that it's a happy ending and everyone lives. There was a senior student project at the University of Minnesota that I went to go see, and they did.
Yes, I wanted to see this so bad.
It was so good. I'll have to dig up the name of the person and say that in the outro. But it was this person's senior project for theater, and they did the musical version of Over the Garden Wall, and they had gotten permission, I believe, from the creator and everything. And so they used all the songs, the music in the show is beautiful. And they used a whole bunch of really cool puppets and like costumes, and it was in this black box theater, and you walked in and there were just leaves everywhere, like autumn leaves all on the floor, and like it would just, you could sit down on a blanket, or like there's hay everywhere. It was just very fall atmosphere, and they just told the story so beautifully, and they changed the ending. They made it so that Greg did die.
Oh my gosh, that would kill me.
It was so powerful, and I mean, the actors, everyone was wonderful. The lighting was really well done. And like they had live music. Oh, I just can't. It was so great. But I mean, it definitely would have changed the story, but I liked the ending of Greg actually dying. It just has a different tone to it, I suppose. And maybe it wouldn't have been as wonderful because Wirt's change might not have been the same. He would obviously have ended differently, and the whole point was that he was saving his brother, and so that change.
I think that would have been a difficult ending for me because the whole journey of these two in this limbo area shows an arc of their relationship as stepbrothers, and how it changes. Like at first, Wirt feels like Greg is just a burden to him, and he's just got to watch him because he's younger. But then they really grow to love each other and look after one another, to the point where Greg is sacrificing himself for Wirt.
Yeah.
And I feel like if Greg didn't survive, then you wouldn't get to think or imagine about life after their time in the hospital. Once they go home and are feeling better again, like how they spend time together.
Go on
as
frog
new
hunts.
brothers. Like as brothers who are like, we've been through this together.
Yeah. I guess I liked the idea of it because I just really like consequences and things, and how I like how you say it was about the brothers, because I guess in the version where Greg dying would work is when it's solely about Wirt, but because it's about the brothers, it's good that he survived. But I guess if the story was more even more focused on Wirt, then it would almost be like Greg had that impact on him. Like Greg is, ultimately in the series, Greg changes Wirt, and if Greg had died, then it would almost be like, Wirt would go on like doing things for him still, and if that makes sense. I really liked
live for him.
Yeah, what they did with the student musical, it almost felt like a really, really lovely, touching, like, goodbye from Greg. Like, the whole story was
Cry.
It was so well done. It felt like it was like where Greg really was handing things off to Wirt and like going through the story with him, trying to equip Wirt with things he would need because Greg was leaving. Like that's what it felt to me, and it is a very different story than
very powerful.
Yes,
but in a different way.
Yeah, and so I like the how it really ends, but just seeing that possibility is really, really beautiful too.
That's so good. Now I really want to see this musical.
I know.
Oh my goodness.
They all need to come back and do it.
So you know what's interesting is that even though these two brothers are both in limbo because they're both in water right now, drowning, their lives are at stake, they're in the limbo together. Like, after death, you know, who would know, like, if your soul and your brother's soul are gonna, like, still be right next to each other, you know? Like, you know, I would think, like, it's kind of random. But it's just cool that they get to go through that journey together.
Yes.
Like, it's, even though after death is unpredictable. Wow, this is so deep.
I love it. I mean, this is how I feel when I watch this show.
I know.
I cry and I just feel the deep. I mean, it's so, this show gives you such it's like this fall, autumn, like nostalgic feeling. It's like this sad and happy at the same time, nostalgic. It makes you feel the feeling of like when you're thinking about, you know, the past, but knowing how things turn out almost, you know?
Right.
And yeah, so it did. It really, really, really hit all of my chords when I was first watching it and like grieving my grandmother. Because I had people die in my life before, but not really ones that I knew as well as my grandmother. I just cried and cried when I watched it, and I still tear up. Especially in episode 9 is when you get the backstory of brothers, and just that horrible feeling you get when they're on the train tracks. And backing up just a second, like, I love the name of the show, Over the Garden Wall, because they're with their friends and it's on Halloween night, so they go to a graveyard. The graveyard is called, what is it called? Eternal Garden Cemetery. So it's called a garden. And the police come and they think they're in trouble, so they run over this wall. Greg and Wirt do. And so they're over the garden wall. And on the other side is the train tracks. And just feeling that feeling, like that sudden sinking feeling when the sound cuts out and you see the train and you hear it and they're standing there, and then that it's like this folksy song starts playing. Old Black Train is the name of the song.
Right.
And you just hear this like guitar, like a folksy song as they're like falling down this hill, and then you get the few seconds of them like sinking into the water. And I mean, you just get a lump in your throat because you're like, oh my gosh, this is, I mean, that's when I realized, like, oh my gosh, they're dying.
Right. That's
like,
when it hits you, because you don't see
know
reality until episode 9.
Yeah.
But the first 8 episodes are just through this world of the unknown.
Right. So you're like, are they in some fantasy world? Like, you just accept it. You just accept that it must be somewhat normal because you don't know anything better. The creators were saying that originally they had a lot of the modern stuff at the very beginning, and I'm so glad they didn't do that, because then the whole time you would be waiting for them to get back. You would know how, like, you wouldn't see the rest of their journey the same way. You wouldn't be, I don't feel like you would be as invested in that journey if you knew they needed to get back to that specific place. Like, you know that they're lost, you know they're trying to get home, but you don't know what that looks like for them, and it just, you're lost with them. And I really love that.
Yeah, I like how you say that you're like invested in their world, in their journey. Like, that is what you think is the normal, like, circumstances, because that's all you know. And then when you are seeing that glimpse of another world, it all, you know, makes you think like, well, how do these connect? And like, oh my gosh, they fell into the water, they're like dying. And yeah, I'm so glad that they didn't put that at the beginning, because then you would have just been thinking about it the whole time.
Yeah.
And I would rather have it, you know, hit me at the end and then now think for eternity, but
I know.
I'm just like thinking all these philosophical thoughts now, especially, I mean, I'm in a place of life where I'm like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? And oh my gosh, so much to think about.
That ninth episode, when they are back, you are abruptly put into the modern setting all of a sudden.
Right. There's no transition at all.
There's no transition. You're just suddenly you're in Wirt's bedroom. He doesn't have his costume on. And you're like, what? Who's this person? And it's Wirt.
I don't recognize him without his hat.
And he's making his tape for Sarah. And
the girl he has a crush on.
Yeah, and they're super cute.
Which I don't quite understand, but we'll get to that.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, there are like 3 people you could very validly ship Wirt with.
Yes,
and
this is
true. We'll talk about that. But yeah, you are abruptly thrown into the modern world, and then you just see how, like, their costumes are so funny and weird, and it's like, oh, it's because it's Halloween and they're wearing their Halloween costumes, and you see how Greg got candy and all these things, and they were saying in the commentary too, and I totally agree. I mean, you see some pretty messed up stuff in these episodes coming before the 9th, like the creepy pumpkin.
Right.
Is super creeped. The
demon possessed gal. Like,
yes.
It's terrifying.
Lana is super, super scary. I mean, that's one of my favorite episodes. It's so
terrifying, but it's deep. It's
so
good.
Scary. But the most unsettling episode is episode 9, because you're like suddenly in this modern setting, and you're like, what is going on? Because you're suddenly on high alert, because it's completely different than anything else you've seen so far, because it's so normal. And it's like, you've just seen some crazy crap. And then suddenly...
And you're pulled away from it.
Yeah.
And so
you're in this...
the normalcy freaks you out.
The normalcy and mundaneness of it all is the complete opposite page of the insane, quirky nature of the unknown.
Right.
That you're like, what is going on? And I love that.
Yes.
I love it.
So good. So we mentioned some shippings.
Yes.
Why don't we talk about those?
Yeah, okay, so...
let's start with the worst. And
the worst?
So
well,
Sarah?
I think we might have different opinions. Excuse me. So
I think there's one clear option, Kelly. I don't think there's 3 options.
Okay, I'm going to say the 3 options, then we can talk about them, just so that the listeners know. Okay, so let's just go by the characters, how you meet them, like by order of when you meet them. So the audience meets Beatrice first. Beatrice obviously is turned into a bird. She's the one who goes through this journey with them, and originally she was trying to settle a kind of a thing with Adelaide the witch, but then she's like, oh, but Wirt and Greg are really great, so I'm not gonna like backstab them. And
at first she owes them a favor because Greg rescues her from a bush.
But was that a con to get them to go to Adelaide's?
Oh, that's true.
That's how I totally see that as like, because Greg helps her and she's like, I owe you a favor. Let's go to Adelaide's. And it's like, for me, I'm like, oh, Beatrice is just trying to get you to go to Adelaide's. So there's Beatrice, and obviously we'll talk about her. And then you don't meet, but Wirt mentions Sarah because Beatrice and Wirt are stuck in a closet and they talk about their devastated secrets. And that's when you learn Beatrice is actually a human. And then Wirt is just like, I have a crush on this girl, and that's all.
That's his deepest secret. It's like, what?
And he's like, and I played the clarinet. And Beatrice is like, those aren't weird. Like,
except for maybe the poetry. But
yeah, like, he's like, I whisper poetry when I go to bed at night. Like, what? So Sarah is, from the modern time, and it's just the girl at school that he has a crush on. Mm-hmm. And, you see her a little bit in episode 9, and then at the end, she's at the hospital with him. Right. And then the third person is
Larna.
Larna. Do you pronounce Larna? It's I'm very bad at I'm always hesitant pronouncing her name.
I wrote it phonetically from
Larna because it does have an R in it, right? Larna. How is that?
I think spelled? It's Larna. Larna.
Larna. Okay.
Either way.
Larna is they meet her the episode after, because Beatrice and the boys part for a little while, and they meet her, and she's very sweet, and Wirt and Lorna sing a little duet, and it's very nice. Elijah Wood, good job singing. But then she turns out to be like demon possessed.
Yes,
and
quite a ride.
Yeah, and Wirt and Greg save her, and the demon goes away, and Lana is happy and free. So those are the three. So, Emma.
I think there's one clear option.
All right, Team Beatrice.
Okay.
Tell me why.
How did you know? Well, one, redheads are awesome.
Okay.
She's a redhead human, by the way, and her
Emma
whole family
is also a redhead.
It's true. It's quite a powerful thing, I must hold. Okay, just the dynamic of Wirt and Beatrice's relationship through this journey. So at first, yes, she is conning them because she wants to, provide Adelaide with a child so that way she can, set her family free.
Because Adelaide has the scissors.
Right.
There are scissors
that will
clip their wings
Which
away.
honestly sounds terrifying to me.
I know.
Just clip the wings off a bird here. But anyway, over time she realizes, no, I don't want to put them through that because they're my friends now.
Right.
So sweet.
Yeah.
But, oh my gosh, they just play off of each other so much.
Yeah, Wirt and Beatrice are pretty
Oh
great.
my gosh. She calls Wirt a pushover all the time. And there was this one episode where it was in the classroom.
Schooltown Follies, yeah.
Where he just went along with everything just to annoy her.
Yeah, he was being stubborn.
Sitting in the corner and, oh yeah, I'll go do that because I'm not a pushover. I remember one time when he was also following along, Beatrice, she was just like, oh, don't worry, I'll just do everything. That was one of my favorite quotes.
Oh, Beatrice is just has this dry sense of humor, and Wirt and Beatrice, their banter is just really, really well done, and they just equal each other out, and it is hilarious.
Yes.
Their dynamic is really, really wonderful.
And then when you mentioned when they were sharing their dark secrets or whatever in the wardrobe that they were stuck in, once the person who was walking by passed by, they tried to get out and they realized they locked themselves in. And so Wirt was just guess we have to spend some quality time together. And Beatrice is just help!
Yeah, and she screams and then it cuts to the next scene. It's classic. Classic.
Yes.
She doesn't want to spend quality time with Wirt.
But even when there's those funny banter moments, which is a good chunk of the humor, there's also moments where Wirt includes Beatrice in the singing and dancing when they're on the frog boat. And he's come sing and dance with us. Yeah. And you're oh, wow, look at this relationship. Oh. And, she decides to sacrifice herself instead of getting the boys hurt through Adelaide. So it's just really beautiful.
I will say, they do Wirt and, they all change each other. But, Beatrice and Wirt have an impact on each other throughout the journey for sure.
It makes me a little sad at the end of the miniseries because I don't know where she ends up. I don't know if her family is happy in this in-between place or if they've moved on to a better place. They're clearly not in reality though.
No.
So
they live in the unknown.
That makes me sad because I do think that Wirt and Beatrice is the best combo. So maybe they'll be reunited when he dies. But.
I do love I also love Beatrice's human character design because she wears just the prettiest dress and her hair is up so fancy and nice. And
but she's so down to earth and feisty and sassy.
Yeah. I feel her dress is almost like Regency.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like to me.
It does look like that.
Mm-hmm. That high... Ooh, I just bumped the table.
It's all good. She rocks my world.
Yeah, she has... Because, See
what I did there?
Yeah, I did. Oh, my gosh.
It's a rock fact.
It's a rock fact. Oh, dear. Well, I feel like Lorna... I cannot. Lorna. I feel like Lorna is only... in it for one episode, so I feel like you just don't get as much time with her, even though I do think they're really sweet together.
She is so sweet.
She is so sweet, and
and it is just a total coin flip when she turns into her demon self.
Right. Can we talk about that episode just for a slight second?
Yeah.
Okay, so this gal has an aunt named Auntie Whispers.
Who is voiced by John Cleese.
Yes! So that's what makes it even better. I love John Cleese.
Wait, I lied. That's a complete lie. John Cleese voices Adelaide.
Yes,
John Cleese
that's
voices
right.
Adelaide and the T-Man.
They're both old witch kind of
I
characters,
know.
so
and now
it's
I'm
easy
like,
to mix them
wait,
up.
who voices Auntie Whispers? I'm gonna find out. One
But
second.
anyway, Auntie Whispers is like this huge slug of a thing. Like, I don't know that I would classify her as a person, but she's just like, I don't know, her shape reminds me of like a slug.
Yes.
But
like, not a super defined features. It's just
right. And she's huge and she
weird
eats
eyes.
turtles.
Her eyes looks like an animal's almost.
Yeah, like an owl's. And she eats out of this barrel of turtles. That's kind of weird. But anyway, while...
And it's, oh wait, who is Tim Curry is
Okay.
Auntie Whispers.
Great. Tim, you're awesome.
Yes.
When Wirt and Greg are trying to hide from this being, Auntie Whispers goes upstairs and goes to bed. And when she's sleeping, Larna's like, okay, you can come out. And Wirt's just like, that's your aunt? And Larna's just like, oh, I mean, we're not really related. And he's just like, oh my gosh, why are you living with her and acting as her slave? Are you kidding me?
Like there's clearly something wrong with this relationship.
Oh my gosh. And then you
yeah.
find out it's because the slug woman is actually trying to protect the world from this demon inside
Yes.
of Larna.
Yes.
Poor dear.
It's a really well done because you think Auntie Whispers is the one who's going to be eating people, and then it turns
Right.
out to be the sweet little Larna, and that's why it's one of my favorite episodes because it really has I mean they all have very good story structures within each episode, but this one especially just like feels really solid to me, and you know they save the day at the end and Larna and Auntie Whispers are happy, and and it has like I really like the song that they sing together. I think it's really sweet. I wouldn't say they're my favorite together just because we don't. I don't know. I feel like okay. Here's where I'm at with the ships. Sarah is my.
Of course, you're a Sarah fan.
I choose Sarah for Wirt because I mean she's the only one who's in reality. The other two are
That's
in
true.
the unknown. And as much as I love Beatrice and Wirt's relationship and how they are clearly become very good friends and really have an impact on each other, and I could definitely see them as a couple, but I like that they stay I'm friends. I mean that it's a friendship.
Yeah.
That they journey through this
That's
together and because I don't feel like you get that a lot, and I like, you know, having it be like she leaves and she is satisfied and fulfilled with, you know, her family and not having a guy. I don't know. Plus, it would have been kind of weird if they had any sort of romantic things because she doesn't turn into a human till the end, and she was
This
a
is
bird.
true.
But I would say it would be pretty cool if. I don't know if Greg and Wirt had been there when she transformed back because they leave before Beatrice goes back to her family.
Right.
So they never know her as a human. They only know her as a bird.
But Kelly, if Wirt falls into the water, he's like a fish and she's like a bird. And it's that whole metaphor of how can a fish love a bird?
Huh. Okay, you just keep telling yourself that, Emma.
Their love is something much greater.
But Sarah,
Someday.
Sarah is alive.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, that's only a little
And
thing.
I really think Wirt's crush on Sarah is the cutest thing because again, you go into the modern world, that 9th episode, and you've heard all of these things about Wirt and his past, and you're like, and then you see it for real, and you're like, wow, Wirt has no idea what reality is actually like because like they go to the party, and he's like, I can't go in there. I wasn't invited to this party. And then Greg is like, I'll go in. And then Wirt's like, you weren't invited either. and then like they, Greg goes in and Wirt follows after him and everyone's like, oh, hey, Wirt, hey. Like, everyone's super excited to see him.
Right.
And Wirt is just
not
like...
what he was expecting.
And not, like, he doesn't even, I don't think, realize, like, he doesn't really acknowledge that everyone's excited to see him because he, in his own mind, is like, no one wants to see me. Like, I wasn't invited. Like, he's just has really high social anxiety.
Yeah, and he's
like,
a little insecure, you know.
And this whole time you just, because you hear about his crush on Sarah and how this guy, Jason Funderburker, is like going after Sarah and like he can't compete with Jason Funderburker. And so you're imagining this really cool guy and Jason shows up and he's got this nasally sound. Yeah, and he's like a total nerd.
Like his,
like, hey,
his
Sarah.
voice honestly hurts my ears. It's just so... I'm sorry to the voice actor who plays him.
I mean, look who does it.
But
Jason.
honestly... Okay, so...
Cole Sanchez is Jason Funderburker. Good job, sir.
Yeah, thank you for making us dislike you. So, Wirt's got all this social anxiety, and he's worried over this dude who is just... Oh, I cannot listen to his voice. It's just awful. And he's like, I love nerds. It's not the fact that he's nerdy or not popular, but that has nothing to do with it. It's just like he has no personality, in all honesty. And so the fact that he's intimidated by him
it's because
says quite a bit.
Even though Wirt and Jason are both nerds, the biggest difference, like personality-wise, is that Jason actually is more confident than Wirt.
Right.
Because
as ridiculous as he is.
Yeah. So that's the thing that Wirt is ultimately like jealous of, is that Jason is the one who's like, you know, who actually has the confidence to make moves on Sarah and, you know, invite her to things and want to hold her hand and all these things. And Wirt like can't get out of his own mind to do those things. And then at the end, when he's in the hospital bed, Sarah is right there and he is just like, yes, you can listen to the tape, or maybe some other tape. Like he's like, you could, let's go to my house and do that. You know, he's he's much more confident and he's like firm about it. And so it is just like encompasses his growth. And I really think, because Sarah, you know, she's like double asking, like, are you sure you don't want to go? Like Sarah wants to hang out with Wirt.
Yeah, she like, does show a lot of...
Sarah likes Wirt too. Concern. And it's very clear, and if it's not clear to Wirt at the time. So that's why I like Sarah and Wirt together the most, because, it's cute. I don't know.
The hardest part I have with Sarah is, maybe it's because I just love feisty heroines, but she doesn't have much personality, in my opinion. Like, she has more personality than Jason Funderburker, let's be honest, but I think that's just what sets me off, especially since Beatrice and her personality bring out another side of Wirt that we don't see in reality. But, you know, maybe he needed that friendship to help with his romance.
I mean, because Beatrice did help change him. And,
right.
Well, we can agree to disagree, and we respect each other's opinions. Because I definitely see how I would read
Beatrice
a fan fiction with
Wirt
and Beatrice.
The best couple. Right, yes.
Yes.
So what was one of your favorite moments overall from the series?
I think just what I've said before, the realization when you get the ending of the 9th episode, when Wirt and Greg are falling into the water and dodging the train, and you realize that they have been fighting death all along.
That is a pretty powerful
right
moment.
In the heart. And like what I said before too, the ending scene with the beast, and you know, Wirt's finally figuring it out, like, maybe it's your soul in this lantern, and because the beast's soul is in the lantern, and the beast is like, are you prepared to like meet full darkness or whatever? And then Wirt's voice cracks a little bit. He's like,
oh yeah, that's right.
Are you? And then he's about to blow it out.
It's like, get wrecked. Oh, so true. Oh my gosh.
So I love that end scene. And again, just like, it just breaks me apart when Greg and Wirt when Greg is turning into a tree and Wirt and Beatrice are just like, no, it just I can't.
Right.
What about you? What's one of your favorites?
Well, my favorite moments are one when they are on the boat with the frogs and Wirt gets a chance to play the bassoon for the band because one of the players cannot participate. And so he's a little nervous, but Beatrice is like, you can do it. And he's like, oh, but the embouchure is like different from the clarinet, and like doing all this music talk, and it's great. But anyway, he starts playing and he plays beautifully. And like in a rest phrase during the musical number, he's talking with Beatrice and she's like, yeah, you're really good actually. And it's just like a really sweet moment where he finally gets to do something that he enjoys in front of, well, frogs, but he performs for people, and that's not in Wirt usually.
No, because because Greg even says like, you should try out for marching band, like, because Wirt doesn't do these things publicly. He doesn't play clarinet publicly, it seems. And that Beatrice doesn't make fun of fun for, because most of the time
she actually is like, wow, you're really good, like
most
sincere about it.
It's so sweet, because most of the time Beatrice would find reasons to pick on him, but she's like, no, actually you're really good, and that's the thing I think is like building the confidence.
So that was one of my favorite like sweet moments.
Plus the song that the frog sings is amazing.
Yes, it's beautiful.
That's the Over the Garden Wall song.
Oh yes, what a rich resonance. And then my second favorite moment is probably when Wirt sees Greg forming into the tree. And he's like, wow, like my little brother who seems so innocent and so naive, like he's giving up his life in order that Wirt can have a chance at life.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I can't.
So you get the sweet moment and the deep moment.
Yeah. What's your favorite song? Do you have a favorite?
I think the one that I remember the most is Potatoes and Molasses.
Yeah.
Because it's just so ridiculous.
Memorable.
I've never had potatoes and molasses. It sounds gross to me, but but I don't know. I think the first opening song is really like, it's enticing because of its the lyrics, but it's also folky and fun and beautiful.
Yeah. All the music is they mix a lot of really cool different older styles. You get like
I love the music.
Jazzy New Orleans feels sometimes, and sometimes it's like this folksy guitar or strings, and it's really, really beautiful. And
traveling music.
Yeah, because they're pilgrims.
That's right.
One of my favorite songs is Miss Langtry's song that she sings because she's a teacher. And
about Jimmy Brown.
About Jimmy Brown.
Jimmy Brown. He left me for the circus.
And so she's a teacher, so she sings the song about the alphabet. So, but each letter is like represents something in her relationship that has gone wrong. So it's like this whole song that's like, just about her ex and like her sadness and all these things, but it's in front of all of her students,
little children,
and it's like about the alphabet. It's so clever, and also just a really beautiful voice that she has. And who is that? Let me look. Janet Klein.
Yeah,
and apparently that character of Miss Langtry was written for Janet Klein because they liked her voice. Like, she's some LA singer, and they liked her really a lot, so they wanted
to reach that status where people just make a character because they like you, not the other way around. Like, wow, that's incredible. Yeah. No, I can't remember the lyrics, but that was a funny song.
A is for the apple that he gave to me, but I found a worm inside.
Oh, that's right.
So that's how it starts. And so and then they go through the whole alphabet. You don't hear a lot of the music. You don't hear all of the whole entire song in the show, but listening to the soundtrack, you get the whole thing. And so the whole song of the Miss Langtry song, it goes through the whole alphabet and even into some of the numbers. And it's so funny and so great and just clever, like how they have all the letters, because some of them are like, A is for this, B is for this, and then with HI it's like they use that as like, hi is what he said to me, and like
or when she gets to the letter Y, she's like, why is the question I ask of why he left? Like,
why is the question that is on my mind. Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, so that's one of my favorites. We can't end the podcast without talking about the art itself for a little bit.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of important in an animation series.
Yeah. And because this is so well done.
Yes.
And again, referencing the commentary, if you have the DVD, listen to the commentary. If you don't have the DVD, go buy the DVD and listen to the commentary, because Nick Cross, the artistic director, has really great things to say. And the whole time they were just saying how, how different it was, because they're both coming from more like television animation, how different it is making this miniseries than a long show, because they had a very short amount of time to do it. And then, but they also they're basically describing the process as a sprint rather than a marathon. So they're trying to push really hard in a short amount of time, and they didn't have to do things in a way that would be long-term sustainable. So they could do more elaborate things, like really, really detailed, elaborate, colorful backgrounds that would not be sustainable for a long-term television show that runs for years and years. Mm-hmm. But they could do, because it was really, really hands-on for them personally too, because in a long-term show, Patrick would not have touched a lot of the, as much as he did with this. And there were specific things that he actually animated. And so that's really cool to hear. And just everything really is super detailed. And they had people working on it from all over the US and all over the world. Which I also found interesting, because they didn't have a ton of people in the studio with them at Cartoon Network. They had a lot of freelancers that would do storyboarding, etc. And then, of course, their animation was done overseas, per usual, which is also really well done. And I'm just going to talk about two references to old animation techniques that they use. A lot of the show is really reminiscent of older animation styles. They all have a lot of really great new stuff too, but two parts in particular are the Highwayman and the Greg's Cloud City part. Mm-hmm. Because the Highwayman, he in the tavern, the Highwayman sings this song, and it just seems like basically interrupts Wirt and breaks up the episode in a weird way. And Patrick is the one who did the full animation for his dance scene, and it's kind of in the style that they would for rotoscoping. So back in the day, for things that are a little more challenging to animate, like a dance or something like that, rotoscoping is when they'd film the person doing it, and then they would individually trace out the moves of the person from the film. So it's much, much different than normal animation. That's 12 frames per second, and for this one he did 24 frames per second to make it more fluid. And so it's really, really
intense. A lot of time.
Yeah, a lot. But that old rotoscoping style makes things look a little abnormal, because it's not your usual cartoon. It's traced on a person. And so you get in that Highwayman song, it's distorted, and he wanted to get that weird feel that it wasn't like the rest of the animation. And he really pulled it off really well. So that's one of the instances of kind of throwback to that rotoscoping days. The other reference to old animation is when in episode 8, Greg is in the Cloud City, and all of these quirky characters and just the way the animation moves, it's very much 1920s cartoon style, with a lot of 1930s colors and things like that. Back in the day, they couldn't use a lot of yellows for various reasons. And so the colors are very blue and green, and just the way the characters move in that scene too, it just feels very, very much like you're watching an old Mickey Mouse cartoon or something.
Sure, yeah. I can see that.
Yeah, so you can really tell, and it's really fun how they just mix and match all of these different styles and elements together into this quirky, fun show.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel like the artwork incorporates so many opposites. When I look at the unknown, which is the majority a forest, it's a wood.
Yes.
I love the art of it because part of it is really beautiful and just looks like somewhere I'd really want to take a walk. And part of it is just so creepy.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's the whole idea of the limbo. Like, you know, maybe it does look nice and you want to stay here and continue on the journey of death. Or maybe it's scary and you're not ready for it and you're going to go back to life. But I just love the contrast in how, when I look at like artwork from Over the Garden Wall, it's just that both beautiful and creepy at the same time.
Yes.
And I'm not usually into creepy things. Like Tim Burton's not my style. No offense, Tim Burton. But this is just so beautiful to me. I just have to reference our friend Kate, who was on the last podcast. She always laughs.
It'll be a couple podcasts
sorry.
From the time that this is airs.
Sure. Okay, well, our friend Kate, who has been on this podcast, she often references how, though Kelly and I are some wonderfully sweet and kind people, we sometimes watch the darkest, creepiest things.
We do.
But here's the thing. We gotta come clean. Here's the thing. Usually those dark things that we're watching,
like Full Metal
Alchemist, or Over the Garden Wall, is very dark in some ways. It's because there's also a redemptive quality in them and a great overarching story.
Yes.
So don't get the wrong idea, but I just think it's hilarious that Kate, sees us that way.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty funny because, and like for Kate too, because she sat down and watched some Full Metal, and that's really hard. You can't just watch the first few episodes, like,
right? And just stop, like,
because
nope.
Because they are pretty dark, but you have to get through the darkness.
But it gets better
because that's like where those characters are coming from.
Right.
You know what I mean? Anyway,
we
will talk about Full Metal another time. For sure. But yeah,
reference that.
And I really, really love how Over the Garden Wall is set in such a beautiful autumn setting. And then as the story proceeds and they're kind of getting closer to death, it turns into winter.
Yes.
And the snow falls and everything is
cold.
white and just dismal and gray. And I really love that.
The cold hand of death. Yeah. Indeed. All these symbols and metaphors. It's crazy.
One of the background artists apparently complained a lot about how many leaves he had to paint.
I believe it.
So many
leaves everywhere. In fact, when Greg was wrapped up in the tree, becoming a tree, he like started spitting out leaves.
And Beatrice is like, "Oh no, the tree isn't even growing inside him."
And he's like, "No, I just ate leaves."
Just one of those like Greg moments.
Yep. It's like only him. Oh, yes.
One of my favorite lines is, you get the episode 9 and all what has happened to them and how they got there, and you get all the backstory, and then Wirt wakes up in the tree where all the bluebirds are huddled, the Beatrice's family. And Beatrice's mother is like, "Don't go out in the storm. Like, there's a blizzard outside, and Wirt needs to go find Greg." And Beatrice's mom's like, "You'll be no use to your brother dead." And Wirt says, "Well, I was never any good to him alive either."
Oh, I'm glad that you brought that one up.
oh, it just hurts so much. And it's just so raw and real, and really it was just another punch in the gut, and another that is like his change moment, and his like and you know that they're dying, and you're like,
right. And he has this realization of like, wow, I was a terrible brother, and I only have so much time before he might be passing on to death forever.
Right. And how that trauma could make you rethink your life. Yeah.
I love these characters.
Me too. And they so deeply impacted us, even though it's just like a one-shot thing. Like, it's not a big franchise. It's not a huge, long series.
Right. It was a sprint, not a marathon.
It was a sprint. And man,
so
does
effective.
It hurt. The feels.
And it's always, you were mentioning how it's nostalgic. Like, every time Halloween season comes around, I'm just like, okay, it's time to watch Over the Garden Wall.
Yes, it is an autumn tradition.
Yes.
You just have to rewatch it. And I'm participating in Inktober this year. I usually do because it's my favorite. And it's just one of those things that I have to draw every year is for Inktober is Over the Garden Wall fan art, because it has that feel of like you want to draw them in ink. It's that black and white, like
the black and white,
old like calligraphy, like kind of feel. This show, it's always worth a rewatch.
Oh, totally. Like, I just watched it last night, but I could watch it again tonight.
I know, I could watch it right now. I just love Wirt and Greg and Beatrice, and
I don't know, even just talking about it, my heart is just full, because it is just really a beautiful show, and there's a lot to it. It's great.
It's great.
And that's a rock fact.
That's a rock fact. Oh. Emma, have you been watching anything new recently?
Yes, I have.
What have you been watching?
Well, as I said last time, I have been rewatching Fairy Tale, which has been great. But I recently started watching Tangled, the series.
Yes! Oh, yes! Yes!
And it's so and
I'm a huge fan.
Can you tell? But I feel like I can't talk too much about it, otherwise I will go on forever, because it is adorable and beautiful, and I love it so much. And there's so much to talk about, so.
I know. Emma and I went on a very long road trip to Kansas City so I could see Hank Green, because I'm obsessed. And
now I'm quite a big fan, so.
Yeah. And we listened to the Tangled, the series soundtrack in the car, and I told her she had to watch it. And she listened to my advice, and I'm so happy. If you haven't watched Tangled, the series, you need to. It is absolutely gorgeous. The animation is flawless. The story is great. I mean, all the voice actors are there. The music is incredible.
Yeah, it's good all around. And if, like, you know, when Tangled ended, you're like, wow, this is the cutest Disney couple ever. Like, why can't I see more of them? This is your chance to see so much more of their development, and it's great.
Yeah, just, you know, both individually and as a couple, their relationship and how it develops. And man, you just get some really great new characters. Varian is my absolute favorite.
Definitely have to talk about this later.
Anyway, I have not been watching anything new recently because I have to have these interviews every week and
rewatch other stuff.
So I don't have anything else new that I've been watching. Well, I guess I can give a little sneak preview. I've been trying to binge watch Samurai Jack.
Oh.
So Jake and I can talk about it.
Well, thanks for having me on your show again.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Podcast, whatever, you know.
Thanks for being here. And this was so lovely. And I love Over the Garden Wall. And I love you. And and I love
the fans
animation.
need their, you know, favorite redhead, of course.
Of course. Thank you. Bye.
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 Thanks so much for listening this week. We hope everyone stays safe and has fun this Halloween. If you are enjoying the show, let us know by leaving us a rating and review. It really helps new listeners find the show. We'd also love to see your support on Facebook, Instagram, and Tumblr at Fanimated Podcast. And we can be emailed at fanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. The art for this podcast is done by me, Kelly Anderson. You can find me on Tumblr and Instagram at kelbell312. The music is provided by the folks at Purple Planet, and thanks again to Emma for joining me this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week. So stay tuned and stay animated.